Howdy gamers, let's talk about the runes for Nidalee jungle, which is kind of a perplexing topic for me as you end up in like weird variations of how she can be played or how she should be played, and where the champion isn't seen that often and also um, has more nuance to it. I'm not entirely sure. Her keystone options are Conqueror, Electrocute, and Dark Harvest, all putting you in different trees and all having their different utility. With Conqueror, it puts you in this precision tree, and then you have this keystone in which you build up AP for attacking the enemy, and then heal for 15% of the damage that you deal. Now, this is an interesting option if you're skirmishing, in my opinion, as it would be more useful in 2v2s and then inevitably in 5v5s compared to something like Electrocute. With Electrocute, you have more single target damage onto one person, and then with that, you end up with a Domination Tree, which the runes in there do about the same thing. Um, do about the same thing that the Precision Tree would do in different ways. For example, Ravenous Hunter is giving you healing on your abilities, and Sudden Impact's giving you extra damage whenever you jump. With Conqueror, you're getting the healing from Conqueror, and then the other runes are kind of negligible up until Coup de Grace, where you're dealing 8% more damage to champions below 40% health. So you get a damage amplification from Coup de Grace, and then you have healing from Triumph and Conquer. So that's what makes the rune variations really weird for me. With Dark Harvest as well, I feel like if Nidalee is the main carry of the team, which she rarely is, then Dark Harvest would be your better option, because with Dark Harvest, whenever you damage a champion below 50% health, you deal bonus adaptive damage and then harvest their soul, permanently increasing Dark Harvest damage by 5. So with Dark Harvest, if you have a lot of supportive lanes, so think about like Ornn mid lane, a supportive top laner, and then a utility bot lane like Ashe Varus plus a mage support probably, then Dark Harvest might be better, as you have a lot of ways, your team has a lot of ways to burst the enemy initially, and then you would come in to finish them off or attack them while they're low to get the Dark Harvest stacks. With Dark Harvest, the damage is based off level, the amount of souls that you get, and then your bonus AP. Pretty similar to Electrocute, but it can be procced on every single enemy champion. So with that, it would make your team fights more explosive, where you could be like, you would burst one target and then you'd go on to the next one and the next one and the next one, versus Electrocute, where it helps you take down one enemy champion. So with Conquer, it helps you whenever you're overall team fighting. I think with Electrocute, it helps you when your goal is to kill a particular champion. So if the enemy had, let's say, 3 tanks and 2 carries, a pretty standard comp, then Electrocute would help you whenever you're diving onto that one champion. So whether it be the mid laner or the ADC that you're probably looking to take out, Electrocute helps you kill that champion. And with that, that's where you get your bigger value in the context of the game. With Dark Harvest, it helps you kill everyone, but then also stack up this damage whenever you're fighting throughout the game, and then inevitably you become a stronger force in the later game, especially if you're getting enough farm from the jungle and maybe solo lanes, and then you're building. I mean, if you're running Dark Harvest and you have the right team comp, you're probably building jungle item into Sorkpin boots, into Deathcap, Liandry's, etc., Lichbane, whatever. And then with that, you become more of a carry versus something like Electrocute, where you'd be really looking to burst one target, and then maybe you'd just be building double magic penetration because you're only looking to damage the carries, and then into Lichbane or something. So then you'd have a cheaper build, not all the farm would be on you, etc. With something like Conquer, you build up the ability power offered from it, and then the extra healing. You need to get the second rotation of your abilities off to get the extra healing from Conquer. So you have to be against targets that don't immediately burst you or can't kill you when you're jumping onto them. So I think if you were playing into a lot of like mostly bruisers and tanks, then maybe Conquer gives you better value. With Conquer, if you're playing into those exact champions too, you also have good options of having Legend Tenacity in the runes, which is going to help you immensely against them, especially if you build Merc Treads or even Ninja Tabby as your boots, because you don't always need offensive boots for Nidalee. So there is a lot of versatility here in the runes. And geez, like most champions don't have to consider this much, but Nidalee really does have all these options. So Starting off with Conker, I'll come back to Electrocute and Dark Harvest. Again, Conker, your basic attacks and spells that deal damage to enemy champions grant you 2 stacks of Conker for 6 seconds, giving you bonus adaptive force based off your level, and then stacks up to 10 times. Ranged champions only gain 1 stack per basic attack, so it is kind of inconsistent in the ways that you would build up Conker if you're in ranged or melee form, but whenever you're jumping onto someone, you're almost immediately building it up. When fully stacked, you heal for 15% of the damage that you deal to champions, 8 for ranged, so whenever you transform, you lose a bit of the value, but that's not so important. Whenever you're in combat too, you have to be out of combat for 6 seconds for the Conqueror to fall off. So in long skirmishes, especially early game, levels 4 to like 7, that's when you're really going to get value out of Conqueror as a jungler, where if you're forcing fights in the enemy jungle, multiple champions are responding, and you have Conqueror, like that's where you really just start overpowering the enemy because you have it versus not. And again, since you're in the precision tree, the secondary rune I think you should look to go is Triumph. Takedowns restore 12% of your missing health and grant you additional 20 gold. You're looking to be really slippery as Nidalee and also like provide for yourself. That's usually what your heal is for, not so much for your team. And with Triumph and your heal, it makes you again just a lot harder to deal with in team fights, because if they're not executing you, Nidalee just continues to be useful in the fight, throwing spears for max range and then going back into a fight when it's opportune. For the third rune here, Legend Tenacity is your best bet if you're playing against like literally any CC. If you're not, then you could run Attack Speed. Attack Speed's like kind of generally useful on Nidalee, but not really. The Tenacity is where you really start getting a huge amount of value from this tree. Legend Tenacity in combination, like I said, with Merc Treads, makes it very, 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 very lame for tanks to deal with you, because really their only counter to Nidalee is to CC her to either get them off themselves or to get Nidalee off their carries. And if that effect is just lessens, then it's so much lamer for them. And then with the fourth rune, I think you'd still go with Coup de Grace, as Nidalee does have an execute in her kit, and even if you're playing into tanks, you're effectively not on cooldown. Her cooldowns are very low, especially in melee form, so you have a lot of ways to get the damage amplification off through your abilities with Coup de Grace, even if you're playing into a tank. So with Coup de Grace, you deal 8% more damage to champions who are below 40% health, and with that, you're just going to be dealing more damage with your spear, your autos, your second rotation probably of your WEQ in melee form. So lots of ways to use that. And then if you're running this, I think that you'd probably be looking to run Sorcery Second with Nimbus Cloak and Water Walking. Nimbus Cloak helping you have more slipperiness again. After you cast a summoner spell, you gain a movement speed increase that lasts for 2.5 seconds and allows you to pass through units. So with that, with your Blue Smite and Flash, it makes it really, really, really lame for the enemy to deal with as you're fighting them in their own jungle, as you have the ability to run them down or run away from them. So valuable. With Water Walking, you gain extra ability power whenever you're in the river and 25 flat movement speed. And then with that, it helps you get into the enemy jungle or get into a lane to gank, or it helps you whenever you're fighting around objectives. There's a lot of utility for Water Walking for Nidalee. It also helps you when you're escaping from the enemy jungle, so really, really useful rune. The reason I think you would run this over Domination, you would be missing out on damage from Sudden Impact, but with Conqueror, you're really looking to have an extended fight versus a burst fight. Sudden Impact helps you more in a burst fight, as the 7 lethality and 6 magic penetration offered from it only lasts for 5 seconds. So that's not going to be for 2 rotations of all your abilities. And that's really what you're looking to do with Conquer versus not. And then the utility that comes in from Nimbus Cloak and Water Walking, I feel helps you more in those situations as well. And then if you were to run Sudden Impact, you'd be in the Domination Tree, and then your only good option would be like Relentless Hunter or Ravenous Hunter, which Ravenous, they're not bad, but I think the utility offered from Water Walking and Nimbus Cloak is going to go a lot further with a rune setup like this. So that's that. And then for the adaptive runes, you would go either Attack Speed if you're looking to clear faster. Attack Speed also helps you in early skirmishes too, as whenever you're on cooldown, building up the attack speed, or building up just auto attacks, gives you more utility. And then Adaptive Force, and then Armor. If you're playing into an AP matchup, it's completely fine to go Magic Resist too, as Nidalee has a lot of ways to kite the camps, and then yeah, just have you don't need the armor basically if you're kiting the camps properly and clearing properly, but it is going to hurt you if you are playing worse. So back to the Domination Tree with your options in Electrocute and Dark Harvest. Like I said, Electrocute I think should be used to burst one target, and in which case you would want to run something like this. I don't think that Ravenous Hunter would really give you that good of value, as if you're looking to burst one target, it would really be about hitting the spear, jumping on them, and instantly killing them because you have too much magic penetration early or too much ability power. And with Ravenous Hunter, you're going to be healing for a percentage of damage dealt by your abilities, but with it, if you're spending all your abilities initially, then you have nothing to heal from because everything is on cooldown once you go in, and then that's when everyone's going to be damaging you on the enemy team. So I don't see a huge amount of value in that. With the secondary runes, it would pretty much play into how I see that this rune page would play out. Coup de Grace giving you more damage to targets below 40% health, which just helps you burst the target, and then Triumph giving you, again, the 12% health regen on kills and assist, and then restoring or giving you an additional 20 gold on kills and assist. I suppose you could run Legend Tenacity. That'd be fine instead of Triumph if you wanted to, depending on the team comps. But in general, I think Triumph would be more useful. The reason you wouldn't run Presence of Mind second on the Conqueror page or this is because the extra mana offered isn't really going to do anything. It's really hard for Nidalee to run out of mana, especially when you're fighting in the jungle. And just in general, really all you're spending your mana on is the spear and her heal. Since the Cougar form doesn't use any mana, Presence of Mind really does go to waste on this champion. Compared to the HP regen, that can be just so valuable, especially since Nidalee has to go in. And then if you're running Dark Harvest, and again, I suppose that this would be to like hyper carry a game, then I think Ravenous Hunter would gain value at that point, as you'd be looking to heal for a percentage of damage dealt by your abilities, but the amount of damage that you deal by your abilities would go up a lot if you're building more carry items, and if the team comp is centered around it. The extra healing on you would be more important, as staying alive would be more important, and then you would be getting multiple rotations of your abilities off, as you'd be looking to kill one target and then the next and then the next and then the next. And then for the secondary runes for this, I suppose they would be the same. You could go for like a scaling option with like Transcendence and Gathering Storm if you were really confident in your laner's abilities. But you really do lose a lot of power by losing out on Coup de Grace and Triumph. A lot of personal power by losing out on Triumph and Coup de Grace. But with Gathering Storm and Transcendence, you gain access to cooldown reduction that you otherwise wouldn't have. And then you gain access to ability power that you otherwise wouldn't have. And if you're building a lot of carry items, since the team comp would provide it, and you're running Dark Harvest, items like Death Cap, Liandry's, then the extra ability power offered and then the cooldown offered is going to go a lot further. With Transcendence, you gain 10% cooldown reduction once you reach level 10, and then excess cooldown reduction is converted into ability power. That would only really apply in like the really later stages of the game. And then with Gathering Storm, you gain ability power every 10 minutes until the end of the game. So even if you're just sitting on the 24 ability power offered at 20 minutes for most of the game, that's still fine in the context of like you're always scaling. And then once it gets to 30 minutes, you have your Death Cap Liandry's, your 48 ability power offered from Gathering Storm, a lot of Dark Harvest stacks, etc. You're really going to be a force to be reckoned with. So yeah, that's my opinions on Nidalee runes. Maybe I'm completely off. I'm not sure, but that's what I think about him. Really unique champion. One of the stronger jungle champions that players just don't play that often, usually because of their lack of skill. But yeah, if you're a higher MMR player, Grandmasters Plus on any server, I would recommend like just pick up Nidalee. She's going to come back eventually, especially where all these junglers are like getting nerfed into the ground. They're putting Darius in the jungle. Like, you think Nidalee's not going to come back? Jeez. Anyways, if this video helped you, leaving a like on the video helps me. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I answer literally all of them. And if you're interested in watching me talk or play League of Legends, you can check out my Twitch. It's twitch.tv/SollyNelson. In season like 5 or 4, I can't remember, I used to main Nidalee jungle on 90 ping. It's probably not that crazy for some people, but like it did feel fucking weird. I would have to buffer abilities like 2 seconds in advance, and I would do it. Jeez, like I complain about ping now, but like before the server move, it was way brutal, man.